The Fisherman Journey of Unknown Worlds. Final video part 2 of 2. Let's continue to chapter 3. As we do, please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you are listening to the sci-fi story so far. Chapter 3, Beneath the Surface. The next morning came sooner than Finn expected. The sky was still dim, with the pale light of dawn barely creeping over the horizon. A cool mist hovered over the water, giving the sea an eerie, dreamlike quality. For the first time in a long while, Finn felt the pull of something greater than the slow, monotonous grind of survival. There was a mission now, a path ahead, and though his mind was filled with doubts, his hands moved with purpose as he prepared the boat for what lay ahead. Aelara stood at the edge of the boat, gazing down into the water with an almost reverent expression. Her bioluminescent glow had dimmed slightly in the early light, but the ethereal quality of her presence remained undeniable. Finn could feel it in the air around her, something ancient and powerful, as if the ocean itself were connected to her in a way he couldn't fully comprehend. The small boat rocked gently as Finn secured the last of his equipment. He'd packed lightly, just a few tools, ropes, and his trusty fishing rod. It seemed almost absurd to bring such things on what he assumed would be a journey into the unknown. But they were all he had. The tools of a fisherman, the last fisherman. "You sure this is a good idea?" Finn asked, glancing up at Aelara as he adjusted the boat's sails. "I don't even know where we're going, or what we're supposed to be looking for down there." Aelara turned her gaze toward him, her glowing eyes reflecting the water's soft shimmer. "I will guide you," she said, her voice as calm as the sea itself. "There is a place far beneath this ocean, a chamber hidden deep in the earth, where the last of the ocean's life force resides. It was sealed away long ago to protect it from those who would misuse it. But now, it must be opened." Finn snorted softly. "A hidden chamber. Huh? Sounds like something out of one of those old adventure stories I used to read. You sure we're not just chasing a myth?" Aelara smiled faintly. "It is no myth, Finn. It is very real. And if we do not reach it soon, the ocean will fade completely. The life force that sustains it is weakening, and once it's gone, there will be nothing left to save." The weight of her words settled over him like a heavy fog. This wasn't just about some forgotten treasure at the bottom of the sea. This was about the survival of the planet itself. And somehow, he had been chosen to play a part in it. The absurdity of it all wasn't lost on him, but deep down, something told him that this was real. The ocean had always spoken to him in its own way, and now it was calling out louder than ever. "All right," Finn muttered, settling into his seat and gripping the oars. "Let's get moving before I lose my nerve." Aelara nodded and, with a graceful motion, slipped into the water beside the boat. Her form shimmered beneath the surface, and Finn could see her glowing silhouette cutting through the water like a phantom. She moved with ease, as if she belonged there, a part of the sea itself. "Follow me," she called, her voice echoing in his mind. "I will lead you to the entrance. But be prepared, Finn. The way is dangerous, and we are not the only ones who seek what lies below." Finn's grip tightened on the oars as the boat moved forward. The idea of facing danger wasn't new to him. He'd weathered enough storms and near-death experiences at sea to know that nothing worth having ever came easy. But there was a different kind of unease now, a sense that something far greater than the elements was lurking beneath the waves. And it was waiting for them. They traveled for what felt like hours, though it was hard to tell in the mist-shrouded sea. Aelara guided him with an unerring sense of direction, her glowing form always just ahead of the boat. The deeper they ventured, the more the air seemed to change. The water grew darker, heavier, and the waves became more erratic, as if something beneath them was stirring. Then, without warning, Aelara stopped. "We are here," she said, her voice soft but firm. She gestured downward, to a spot where the water seemed to ripple unnaturally. "The entrance is below. We must descend." Finn squinted at the water, seeing nothing but murky darkness. "How far down are we talking?" "Far," Aelara admitted. "But the journey is more than just physical. The ocean will test you. Finn, it will try to turn you back. You must not give in to fear or doubt. Only with a clear mind and steady heart can you reach the chamber. Finn stared at her, the gravity of her words weighing on him. The ocean was going to test him. He had no idea what that meant, but there was no turning back now. With a deep breath, he secured his gear and prepared to dive. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered to himself as he strapped a makeshift oxygen tank to his back. "Testing me? What does that even—" Before he could finish, Aelara rose from the water, her hand outstretched. "I will be with you," she said, her eyes glowing with an intensity he hadn't seen before. "Together, we can do this. Trust me." He hesitated for a moment, then took her hand. The moment their fingers touched, Finn felt a surge of warmth spread through him, a comforting presence that seemed to calm his racing thoughts. The fear, the doubt, all of it faded into the background, replaced by a strange sense of peace. For the first time in a long while, he felt ready. With a final glance at the boat, Finn took a deep breath and dove into the water beside Aelara. The descent was immediate and jarring. The water was cold, colder than he had anticipated, and it wrapped around him like an icy shroud. His heart raced as the pressure built in his ears, but Aelara's glowing form remained just ahead of him, guiding him deeper into the darkness. The deeper they went, the stranger the ocean became. At first, the water had been dark and murky, but now it seemed to pulse with energy, glowing faintly in shades of blue and green. Strange shapes moved in the distance, massive, shadowy figures that Finn couldn't quite make out. The pressure continued to build, but every time he felt it might be too much, Aelara's presence steadied him, keeping him calm. And then, without warning, the water around them began to shift. A sudden current grabbed hold of Finn, pulling him sideways with terrifying force. He struggled to swim against it, but it was like fighting a riptide. Aelara darted back toward him, her face filled with alarm. "The ocean is testing you," she called out, her voice urgent. "Do not let it break you. Finn, focus." But it was easier said than done. The current was relentless, dragging him deeper into the darkness. His chest tightened, panic rising in his throat as he fought to regain control. The shadows around him grew darker, larger, as if the ocean itself was closing in. And then he saw them, giant, glowing eyes peering at him from the depths. Finn's heart stopped. They were massive, far larger than anything he'd ever seen in his life. Great, shadowy creatures that lurked in the dark, watching him with unblinking eyes. For a moment, he was paralyzed, fear rooting him in place as the creatures drew closer. But then Aelara's hand found his, pulling him back from the brink. "Trust yourself? Finn!" she shouted. "You are stronger than this. Keep going." With a surge of determination, Finn forced himself to move. He kicked against the current, pushing forward with all his strength. His eyes locked on Aelara's glowing form. The shadows loomed larger, but he refused to look at them. He focused only on Aelara, on her hand gripping his, guiding him through the darkness. The pressure in his chest began to ease. The current lessened, and slowly, the shadows receded. He had passed the first test. Aelara gave him a nod of approval as they continued their descent, the glowing waters surrounding them once again. Finn's mind raced, still reeling from what he had seen. The ocean had come alive in ways he hadn't imagined, and it wasn't finished with him yet. Ahead of them, a faint light appeared, a soft, pulsating glow from the ocean floor. The chamber was near, and so was the deeper catch. Chapter 4, The Final Test. The light from the ocean floor grew brighter as Finn and Aelara descended, casting long shadows across the eerie, alien landscape below. The water was no longer the murky blackness it had been during their descent. It now shimmered with an ethereal glow, pulsing with energy that seemed to come from the very depths of the earth itself. Finn's heart pounded in his chest as they approached the source of the light. There, nestled in a massive chasm on the ocean floor, stood the chamber Aelara had spoken of, a structure unlike anything Finn had ever seen. It was ancient, yet somehow alive, its walls made of a material that glowed with an inner light, as though it held the very essence of the ocean within. The chamber was massive, surrounded by towering pillars that spiraled upward, disappearing into the dark waters above. Strange symbols, like those from an ancient language, were etched into the walls, pulsing softly with the same rhythmic energy that seemed to flow through the sea. Aelara came to a stop in front of the entrance, her bioluminescent glow blending with the light from the chamber. She turned to Finn, her expression somber but filled with purpose. "This is it," she said, her voice echoing in his mind, the heart of the ocean's power. "Once we enter, the final test will begin, and only you can activate the energy within." Finn swallowed hard, his gaze fixed on the massive structure before him. He had come this far, but the weight of the task ahead was suddenly crushing. How could he, a simple fisherman, possibly hold the fate of the ocean and the planet itself in his hands? The idea was absurd. "I don't know if I can do this, Aelara," Finn muttered, his voice shaking slightly. "What if I fail? What if I'm not the one you've been waiting for?" Aelara's eyes softened as she reached out and took his hand. "You are the one." "Finn, I know you are. The ocean chose you for this task. It has tested you, and you have proven your worth. But now, you must trust in yourself. The chamber will not open for me, or for anyone else. It will only respond to you." Finn stared at the entrance of the chamber, his mind racing. He had faced many challenges in his life, from brutal storms to the slow death of the oceans. But nothing had prepared him for this. He was standing at the edge of something far greater than himself, something that could change the fate of the world. And there was no turning back now. With a deep breath, Finn nodded. "All right, let's do this." Aelara led him toward the entrance of the chamber. As they approached, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, and the pillars surrounding the structure hummed with energy. The massive door, which had been sealed shut for millennia, slowly began to slide open, revealing a vast, open space within. The interior of the chamber was breathtaking. It was as if the very ocean itself had been captured and preserved within its walls. Streams of glowing water flowed along the floor, weaving between intricate carvings and ancient machinery that pulsed with life. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform, and atop it was a large, crystalline structure, glowing with a deep blue light. Finn stepped forward, his eyes wide with awe. The energy in the room was palpable, like a living force that wrapped around him, filling him with both fear and wonder. This was the source of the ocean's life force, the power that had sustained it for millennia and the key to reviving the seas. But as he approached the platform, a deep rumble echoed through the chamber, and the water around them began to churn violently. "It's beginning," Aelara said, her voice tight with urgency. "The final test. You must hurry." "Finn, the ocean's guardians are awakening." Finn's heart raced as the ground beneath him trembled. From the shadows at the edges of the chamber, massive shapes began to emerge, creatures unlike anything he had ever seen. They were ancient, towering beings made of water and energy, their glowing eyes fixed on Finn as they approached. "They don't look too friendly," Finn muttered, backing away as the creatures advanced. "They are the guardians of the ocean's heart," Aelara explained, her voice tense. "They exist to protect the life force from those who would misuse it. But they will not distinguish between friend or foe. You must reach the crystal before they reach you." Finn's mind raced as he scanned the room, his pulse pounding in his ears. There was no time to hesitate. He had to act, and fast. The crystal was only a few yards away, but the guardians were closing in, their massive forms looming over him like sentinels of the deep. With a surge of adrenaline, Finn sprinted toward the platform, dodging the glowing tendrils of energy that lashed out from the creatures. The ground shook beneath his feet, and the chamber was filled with the sound of rushing water as the guardians moved closer, their forms shifting and swirling like living waves. He reached the base of the platform just as one of the guardians swung its massive arm toward him. Finn ducked, narrowly avoiding the blow, and scrambled up the steps, his heart racing. The crystal pulsed with energy, its deep blue light growing brighter as he approached. "Place your hands on the crystal," Aelara called from below, her voice filled with urgency. "It will respond to you. You are the key." Finn hesitated for only a moment before reaching out and placing his hands on the crystal. The moment his fingers touched its surface, A surge of energy shot through him, and the entire chamber erupted in light. The Guardians froze in place, their forms shimmering and dissolving as the crystal's power enveloped them. For a moment, the world was silent. Then, the crystal began to glow even brighter, and Finn felt the energy within it flow through him like a river. It was a power unlike anything he had ever felt, vast, ancient, and alive. He could feel the ocean's heartbeat, the rhythm of the tides, the pulse of life that had once sustained the planet. And then, the final test began. In his mind's eye, Finn saw the ocean as it had been, vast, teeming with life, its waters stretching across the globe. He saw the creatures that had once thrived beneath its surface, the ecosystems that had flourished for millennia. And then, he saw the destruction, the slow, inevitable death of the seas, the drying up of the oceans, the collapse of the natural world. It was overwhelming, the weight of it all pressing down on him like a tidal wave. But within that wave, he saw something else, hope, a chance to restore what had been lost, to breathe life back into the world. But it would require a sacrifice. The voice of the ocean whispered in his mind, offering him a choice. He could release the energy now, revive the seas, and restore balance to the planet. But in doing so, he would drain the last of the ocean's life force. The ocean would be reborn, but it would come at a cost, his life. Finn's breath caught in his throat as the truth settled over him. He had known this journey would be dangerous, but he hadn't expected this. The ocean had chosen him, but it demanded everything. He glanced down at Aelara, who stood at the base of the platform, her eyes filled with understanding. She knew what the ocean required. She had always known. "It is your choice." "Finn," Aelara said softly, "the ocean is offering you the chance to save it. But the price is great. Only you can decide." Finn closed his eyes, his heart pounding. He had spent his life on the sea, and now, in its final moments, it was asking him for one last gift, his life in exchange for the ocean's rebirth. He took a deep breath and opened his eyes. "I've lived my life," Finn said quietly. "It's time for the ocean to live again." With a final, steadying breath, Finn pressed his hands firmly against the crystal and released the energy. The chamber exploded in light, and the ocean roared to life around him. He felt the water rise, felt the tides surge, felt the ocean's heartbeat return, and then everything went still. Finn had given everything. The ocean was reborn. This concludes our story. Thank you for listening.